Hi, I'm Dr. Bridget Bongard, Medical Director of the Maui Cancer Wellness Retreats. This is the first video in our series on personal creation and transformation in your life. And we hope you'll enjoy it. It ought to be fun, and it's also very applicable. Things that you can use to help yourself be more hardy, resilient, have a deeper understanding of yourself and how it works, a deeper understanding of the healing process, and how you can activate it and utilize it. So today we're going to talk about self-hypnosis, understanding the power of your mind as a healing tool. Now the fascinating thing is that if you were to take a saw and lift up the top of your head and look down in there, you would see the left and the right brain, and you'd be very curious as to what they did. Well, it turns out that the left brain is sort of your academic side. It's your logic, it's your judgment. It puts things in little boxes. It keeps your life organized. It's very factual and very reality-based. But the right brain actually is the wild, creative, fun, and that's the part of your brain that's really connected with your intuition, connected with problem solving on a higher level. So for instance, you can't solve a problem at the level in which it was created, can you? You need a higher look at it. You need a different, more expansive look at it, and that's exactly the job of the right brain. So it turns out that the extent of your conscious awareness is very minimal. Do you realize that we can only process 40 pieces of information at one time in our conscious mind, but over 11 million in our subconscious mind? And when you look at this slide about this iceberg, what you see is that the conscious mind is only the tip of the iceberg, and all the other information is gathered in the subconscious, which is 90% of all the information that you take in. There are many models to explain this, and here's one that I'd like for you to look at, which is talking about the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and the unconscious mind. And the fascinating piece about this slide is that each one of them is governed differently. So on the outside of our awareness is the conscious mind. And underneath that is the subconscious mind. And then there is another piece of us that some people call, or some scientists call, the unconscious mind. And each of these have three different functions. Now we sort of already talked about the conscious mind, but the subconscious mind actually has unlimited space, unlimited capacity, and unlimited ability to pull things together into a solution for you. The unconscious mind, little bird, guess he agreed. So the unconscious mind actually is what is running your bodily functions. Your heart rate, your digestive system, all your elimination systems, your immune system. Isn't that interesting? So when we want to harness the mind, what we would like to do really is go into the subconscious and the unconscious mind. So how do we do that? Our brain is so interesting. It actually has different brain waves that correlate with each of these areas of the mind. So you have the conscious mind, and when the conscious mind is working, your brain waves are very, very fast, called beta. You're keyed in. If you're going too fast, you may even become anxious. And then when you begin to transform your brain waves into the alpha state, which is the creative, daydreamy state where you're thinking maybe about a vacation, or you're looking at this leaf blow over here, totally just focusing on that It's really interesting. Then all of a sudden you sort of feel a flood of peace go into your body and through your body. And then if you want to take that peace and inner awareness even further, then you can go into theta. You can do this through music, but the brain waves become slower and slower as the body begins to rest and focus internally on solutions. And then the final stage is delta, and most people are asleep with these delta waves, which are very, very slow. But those who can actually manifest delta waves actually go deeper and deeper into a greater understanding and ability to tap into the subconscious mind and the unconscious mind. Now let's talk about epigenetics. Why would we bring this up? Because it turns out that the mind actually is in direct correlation with the rest of your body. And that includes your immune system. So what does epigenetics mean? It means that just because we have DNA doesn't mean that every piece of our DNA gets turned on. No, as a matter of fact, we can actually flip a switch. We have ways that we can turn genes on and turn genes off on a subconscious level. So that's why it's very important for us to be aware of our subconscious and what we're putting into it. A sort of an example of epigenetics would be a caterpillar. When a caterpillar goes into a cocoon, different genes are turned on and off. And then it forms a chrysalis, or the cocoon, and emerges from that. And during that time, different genes were switched on and off, and now it's completely transformed into a butterfly. And we undergo the same process actually on a daily basis. It's fascinating. So how do we switch this on or off? How do we learn how to express good genes, genes that bring us health and vitality, not the genes that we're programmed for to create disease? So that's part of our series, and that's one of the reasons why we want to teach you how to work with your subconscious mind. So what turns on genetic expression? How does all this work? Well, it turns out that your environment has a part of it, your decision making is a part of it, and then of course that's focused also on what genes you inherited in your genotype, just like this slide shows you. And as I said before, there's really a bidirectional communication between the mind and the body. It is absolutely inseparable. So you can see in this slide that when we have stress or anxiety, then it turns on different neurochemicals, which then go to turn on the immune system, and then the immune system creates these inflammatory chemicals or peptides that actually go back and feed back into the brain. And so there's just this constant modulation that you can change for the better. Also too, consciousness is so important. It turns out that we take in information and don't even realize it. So think about a small child. Let's think about a baby. And babies mirror what they see in the adults, don't they? They're like little sponges. So they all of a sudden be starting to talk like mommy or act like daddy. But at any rate, the point is that we do have these mirror neurons, and even when we're in conversation with someone else, we're constantly watching and constantly absorbing what they're saying, what they're doing, and how they're doing it. And then this actually turns on genetic expression. Fascinating. And this even goes into the learning curve. So for instance, we learn, or we're only able to absorb about maybe 45 minutes of conversation. Well, everybody's been a student, and for some of us, depending on the class, it was much less than that. But at any rate, what happens is that you actually go up to peak performance, and then you decline in your attention, then your brain needs to rest. But during that time, look at this slide. It's fascinating that you'll note that genes are turned on and off with the activity of the brain. Psychosocial stress also turns these genes on and off into a pro-inflammatory milieu, accelerates aging, creates vulnerability to disease states by putting out all these inflammatory cytokines and chemicals. And it's worse if you've had trauma, emotional trauma in the past. That's why it's so important to work with the subconscious mind, find it, and clear it out. So this next slide is this rat climbing up the string. Shows you that when we do repetitive activity, this creates changes in our brain. The more we do it, the deeper, the more lasting the change. It's true, isn't it? So remember when you were a kid and you're riding a bicycle and you're trying to pedal and you're trying to steer and there you go. And then you pick it up and you go again and you keep going until it becomes this body memory. Well, what's really happening is neuroplasticity. What that means is that the brain is pruning the neural connections and it's taking rerouting and rewiring your brain. And that's an exciting thought, isn't it? And this next slide talks about positive neuroplasticity, meaning that if you look and see this brain that has mental stimulation, it has intellectual stimulation, social interaction, good emotional health, physical exercise, proper nutrition, sleep, then the brain's connections become vast and interfacing, and you become alive and more cognizant. But if you have negative neuroplasticity, you don't have stimulation, you have social isolation, sedentary activities, poor emotional health, then those connections begin to prune. And this can lead to poor health, poor cognition, well, things we don't want. So be aware of that. There's a study that took monks that were deep meditators, experienced meditators, and they actually looked at their genetic expression in what's called a genetic heat mapping. And you can see that on this slide. And they took these experienced meditators and then they looked at people who had never meditated before and put them through an 8-week series. And what they found was that after 8 weeks, those genes started to turn on, just like those in the meditators. So this is really a powerful thing to do this kind of internal work, self-hypnosis, meditation, because there is a physical profound effect. So when you look at this next slide here, that hypnosis, meditation, this kind of internal work that we're doing, this kind of internal landscape, really changes the way our brain, our heart, our telomeres, our genes, our immune system, our inflammatory state functions. That's one of the reasons why it's incredibly important to really be aware of this and then play with this on a daily basis so you have this kind of understanding and ability to work with yourself. For instance, meditation suppresses over 1,000 stress-related genes linked to conditions such as inflammation, high blood pressure, asthma, diabetes, Alzheimer's, chronic pain, cancers. So this is important work. There are scientific articles that also have looked at this. So researchers at Ohio State showed that there was a 26 to 39% difference in 2 immunologic assays utilized to measure the activity of T cells, which is important to the immune response. Here's another paper in hypnosis with women with breast cancer and its effect on cytokines. When these women were given chemotherapy and hypnosis training prior to the chemotherapy, and then they utilized it all the way through their chemo for 6 months, guess what happened? The granulocyte colony stimulation factor and tumor necrosis alpha levels dropped, providing a beneficial response because these cytokines have been associated with increased tumor growth and metastatic disease. Hypnosis works. There's another article that looked here it's called a meta-analysis, which means that it looks at over 75 different articles to say, does hypnosis work or does it not? Does it affect the immune system or does it not? And the answer is, in this slide, yes. And I might note too that this was from 2019 and the other paper was from 2020. So this is recent data that just substantiates what we're talking about and the importance of this. So self-hypnosis can be used for many, many different things. Anxiety, depression, pain control, symptom relief. It improves sleep. So there's a lot of different ways that you can use it. And so how you begin to work with the hypnotic state is really on the breath. And the good thing is that's something everybody has and it costs nothing. But when you actually manipulate the pattern of your breath, when you look at this slide, you'll see it changes the brain waves. So remember we talked about beta? That's where your really fast activity is and your brain is just processing 90 miles an hour. And your breath is more rapid. But when you go into that daydreamy state, like we were watching this palm leaf just go back, or banana leaf go back and forth, and only tuning into that and focusing on that, our breath also slows. So we can deliberately train ourselves to go into a state of relaxation on the breath. And it changes us out of that fight, flight, or freeze and into that state of healing and relaxation. And it allows us to get into deeper states of consciousness where we have a different way of looking at things and a deeper level to draw from solutions. So this slide of a lighthouse shows you that a lot of us are externally focused. We're always rotating, looking, taking things in externally. And what we want to do is turn that focus inward. So let's do a little experiment. Kind of fun. Everybody put up one finger. Could be your right, could be your left. I don't know which one you'll choose. And let's just look at this finger. And like the lighthouse, let's only just absorb our attention, all our focus, all our light, all our interest. And I'd be curious to know, as you stare at that finger and totally forget the rest of your body, almost even becoming your finger. As you stare at that finger, you might even look at the fingerprints. You might feel the nail as it gently rests in the cuticles. You might feel that that finger is all attached to the rest of your hand. And you might feel that finger having maybe even a different temperature or vibration. It's interesting. And that's all you're attending to is just that finger. All right. So what sensations do you have in that finger? Identify them. Good. Now check the other finger. How does it feel? Amazing. A totally different sensation, because where attention goes, energy flows. So what we're going to do in this series is actually teach you how to harness that attention and intention. This is a joke about let's make a deal, but let's make a deal with your body. Let's actually play with it and explore it and see how we can work with it. So thank you very, very much for your time, and be happy to answer any questions about this. And I hope you'll join us on not only our Share and Care Share and Care Thursdays, where we have a support group for our cancer warriors, led by 2 of our cancer warriors, and that you'll also enjoy this personalized creation and transformation series. Thank you very much.